So I'm 4 years old, and my dad just picked me up from kindergarten. I have this ponytail, and we're driving from our kibbutz to the big city of Beersheba. It's our regional city, and to me, as a 4-year-old, it looks really big. And we're driving in his old Renault car, and as we drive through the main street of Beersheba, he stops, looks to the right-hand side of the street and says, "Rotem, can you see those huge gray buildings over there? This is Ben Gurion University of the Negev. I'm a student here. One day, you'll become a student as well." So I look up to my dad and I say, "Why should I?" And he says, "Well, that is just something we do in our family." So a little girl named Rotem started dreaming. And 16 years later, I finished my army duty, I hang my uniforms on the wall, and 3 weeks later I stand excited just to start my first day at law school, Tel Aviv University Law School. Do you remember your first day at university? Did your parents also tell you that higher education is the option for you? Maybe the only one? As my dad was driving that main street of Beersheba, on the other side of the street, a boy named Yaakov grew up. And even though we lived just across the street from the university, Yaakov never entered the university gates. Not as a student, not as a visitor, not to drink coffee at the coffee shop, not even to buy a pencil for his kid. Yaakov grew up in Shchuna Daled, neighborhood D. Neighborhood D is the worst neighborhood in Beersheba, where kids are wandering around the street unsupervised, and there are drugs and violence all around. So Yaakov never thought the gatekeepers would let him in. Actually, he did enter the university once. It was his wedding day, and he came in with his newly wedded wife to take the wedding pictures, because it's the nicest, greenest place in the desert city of Beersheba. But that was the only time. After that beautiful wedding, Yaakov got into trouble. He became a drug dealer. That's the only way he knew how to survive. He got into jail, went out of jail, and later became a burden on the welfare authority in Israel. When he was walking with his 4-year-old Yuval, she has this curly hair and big brown eyes, and they were walking in the main street of Beersheba. He never pointed out those gray buildings, so she could not start dreaming. Yaakov and I could have never met. I went to university. He never entered the gates. I became a lawyer in a big law firm in Tel Aviv. He went to jail. I never dealt with welfare authorities. He was a usual client. He was grown up in a society that does not encourage people to go to universities and does not really care about learning. I was nurtured in a family that university was all that was talked about. So I received all the knowledge I needed in that university. And he never entered the gates. But we did meet once. We met in Access for All. Access for All is a unique Israeli NGO that creates access to universities for all people, especially those who otherwise would not have the opportunity. How do we do that? I want you to think back to your time in the university. Remember how empty it felt at nighttime? Because no one liked to teach at nighttime, right? So we used those empty classes. How did you get to school? Did you walk? Did you take your car? Public transportation, maybe? Our participants, they don't have a car, and they don't have money for public transportation. So we send them buses that will take them from the neighborhoods to the university. And what did you eat on campus? Was it the cafeteria? Food? Maybe restaurants around school? I don't know when my participants woke up in the morning or when was the last time they had something to eat. So we give them sandwiches and beverages before class. Can you hear your mother tell you never study on an empty stomach? We bring 2,400 Israelis from all around the country to study at evening times in 4 universities in Israel. But what do we teach? I want you to think of that time you really, really needed someone to give you legal advice regarding your employment rights. We teach introduction to law. And how about that time when you really, really wanted someone to teach you about nutrition when you were younger? We teach introduction to medicine. And that helpless feeling you had sitting in front of the mortgage agent, we teach introduction to business. And all those times you really wish someone will tell you how to speak better to your kids, we teach introduction to psychology. All that basic knowledge is there in the university. But if you're not lucky enough to get to the university, maybe no one will teach that to you. And who teaches? Remember that 21-year-old girl, me? I grew up in a kibbutz, then in army bases. I became an officer in the Air Force and straight to Tel Aviv Law School. I grew up in all those elite places. I never got to know the Yaakov of our nation. I never crossed the street to the other side of the main street of Be'er Sheva. So there are 100 students like me every year, come from all those fields in the university. They never got to know the periphery of the Israeli society. But now, by teaching, they're actually taught themselves about how unique the society in Israel is, what changes need to be done, and in what way we can make those changes really work. And I hope for them. If I succeed, that law student, she'll take pro bono cases for the rest of her life. And that med school student, he's gonna go to public hospitals and not private practice. And the psychology student, she's gonna practice psychology in tough neighborhoods and not in the privileged ones. And if I do my job even better, they will become teachers and social change agents, because that's what society really, really needs. Can you remember your graduation night? How excited you were? How excited your parents were? Our graduation night is skyrocketing exciting. There are children there, hanging from the ceilings and the walls. And it's a big, big mess, a big balagan. And that child, when she looks at her mom, go up to stage, get a certificate from the dean, and that child sees dad finish a course in the university, they know that they can start dreaming of that place. And that one day, they'll belong there. So Access for All is the story of a healthier society. One in which education is the right of every person, rich or poor, old or young, a woman or a man, Jewish or Arab, literate or not. It's also the story of the young generation in Israel, those young professionals. They learn about social change so they can become the better social agents of tomorrow.